it a great deal of thought, Grandpa.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Someday he's going to get killed picking up a wounded buddy.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook.
Through the heat and the smell of gunpowder, back to the pickup zone.
The acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
North Vietnamese surface vessels attacked U.S. destroyers operating on routine patrol in international waters in the Gulf of Tonkin.
Up to now, we've been as forthcoming as possible about military operations.
Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
Do you remember the World Cup in South Africa from several years ago? There was this crazy instrument that people would play in the stands called a vuvuzela. People who attended the matches said that the sound was deafening, a cacophony of unrecognizable noise that made most of what was happening in the stadium intolerable. Imagine trying to talk to someone in that crazy cyclone of sound. Their voice would be unheard, and no matter how loud they shouted, it wouldn't penetrate the volume of that irritating horn. Our world, and especially our media culture, is an infinite stadium of vuvuzelas. No one can hear themselves think, and more importantly, when someone has something to say, they can't be heard over the noise. But what if someone has something they really need to say? What if all the noise that we've been subjected to isn't the truth, but is something to make sure we keep distracted by the noise of the horn? The most taboo thing to do in Western society is to ask questions about what everyone takes as government gospel. It seems the closer that people get to the truth, the more they are silenced. Our world has been subjected to wars and famine and oppression, all at the hands of the powerful. They have a vested interest in keeping the narrative under their control. When a person stands up to talk about things like the JFK assassination, or vaccines, or poisons in our food supply, the powerful vuvuzela voices get louder and drown out any questions that try to make their way to the surface. If there is anything that must be done for a society to function, it starts with our ability to ask the questions that must be asked about the things we see and feel in our world, our society, our governments, and in our own bodies. Without it, we are just moving machines in a maximalist world that values efficiency and control over everything, especially humans. This system that has stifled any dissent and has insisted upon its superiority over the people has used its tangled web that has been woven over the course of history to make sure that nothing that we saw with our own eyes was ever given any merit. The people at the top of the power structure believe that the system they have created is impenetrable to question. Politicians and elections have become irrelevant because they can simply wait out the will of the people. They have created two classes of people: those who are on the take from the taxpayer and the citizens who live under the oppression of those who do the taking. The government extorts the talents and good nature of its citizenry and then uses everything they have at their disposal to manipulate their channels of communication and oppress those who choose to speak out. When the colonists gave their complaints against the king in the Declaration of Independence, they listed the troubles that the crown had caused. Jefferson called them the grievances, and while at the moment of their writing they seem connected to that era's issues and governmental abuses, reading them again, we can see that the inherent nature of the powerful is to use the same tactics over and over to control the masses and elevate their own status. He spoke about justice and representation, but also how the king manipulated his minions to keep the people from their natural inherent rights. Here are just a few he wrote then that seem to be part of the world we have been forced to live in for so long.
He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people.
And here we are today. This 1,000-headed Cerberus has been shown for what it is, a hound of Hades bent on destroying the people who had granted its charter for existence. Its time has come to be exposed and choked off from remaining in our system. The good people of this land are leading the charge. Crushed by the weight of a punitive life, they asked for the people coming to Washington this time to not play the game the way it has always been played. They asked for this sinister system to be brought into the daylight so that everyone could see what they already intrinsically knew. They asked for the end of a corrupt and criminal system. And the people who were elected have started to take their posts and hold up their swords. The monster is being transformed day by day, and its death cannot come fast enough for the good people of this nation. Our health, our resources, our requests for peace have all fallen on deaf ears and cruel hearts. We have been lied to and abused by people who had great disdain for us. Our government must be dismantled with real justice and replaced by one that places the individual at the top of the pyramid. The people who are leading now must remain vigilant to the revolution. They must never accept that what has been is the way for a free people to flourish. They must continue to ask radical questions about how to obtain peace, justice, and robustness for our country. There is no time like the moment to toss the old system out and begin the world anew. This series of coming videos are about the questions that cannot be asked. The American citizen always has the right to speak out and challenge the powerful about what they see with their own eyes. We should have the chance to talk about medical manipulation and what has happened to our trusted institutions. We should know about what has happened in our history and why our government has covered up assassinations and lawfare. We should be able to challenge the old assumptions about the press and episodes we have long assumed as fact, like Vietnam, Watergate, or weapons of mass destruction. We should question what we see in the sky, and we should have the power to challenge the orthodoxy of government dishonesty. After all, our heritage is Jeffersonian. We are endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights. And when the government tramples on those rights by force or dishonesty, we the people have a duty to reform a government in our own image.
That to secure these rights of the individual, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.